The name Stalingrad echoes through history, synonymous with one of the most brutal and decisive battles of World War II. We often hear about the armies, the generals, and the grand strategies. But what about the people who called this city home? What about the hundreds of thousands of civilians caught in the crossfire of a battle that would rage for over 5 months? This is their story, the untold story of survival in the heart of the inferno. Before the war, Stalingrad was a bustling industrial city on the banks of the Volga River. Nearly 500,000 people lived here. They were factory workers, teachers, doctors, and children, with dreams and lives as vibrant as any other city. But in the late summer of 1942, their world was set to turn into a frozen, war-torn wasteland. The German Sixth Army, a formidable force, was advancing, and Stalingrad was its prize. Hitler saw it as a symbolic and strategic key to victory on the Eastern Front. Stalin, for whom the city was named, was equally determined that it would not fall. The civilians were trapped between these two iron wills. On August 23, 1942, the nightmare began. The German Luftwaffe unleashed a bombing campaign of unimaginable ferocity. In a single day, thousands of tons of bombs rained down, turning entire districts into seas of fire and rubble. Eyewitnesses described the sky turning black with smoke, the air thick with the smell of burning. Buildings collapsed, trapping families inside. Streets where children once played became death traps. One survivor, Yelena, recalled her mother grabbing her hand, screaming, "Run, don't look back." They ran through a city that was literally melting around them. This initial blitzkrieg from the air was designed to break the city's spirit. Instead, it forged a grim resolve. The initial order from Moscow was clear: no mass evacuation. The thinking was that the presence of civilians would stiffen the resolve of the city's defenders. Workers were ordered to stay in their factories, producing tanks and ammunition even as the fighting reached their doorsteps. Men, women, and even teenagers who weren't soldiers joined militia units, digging trenches and anti-tank ditches. They became part of the city's defense, fighting alongside the Red Army soldiers. Imagine the sheer terror and bravery. One moment you're a worker, the next you're holding a rifle, defending your home against one of the most powerful armies in the world. As the German army pushed into the city, the fighting became a brutal street-by-street, house-by-house struggle. This is where the true horror for civilians unfolded. Their homes became fortresses, their basements became bomb shelters, and their neighborhoods became battlegrounds. A young boy named Sasha later wrote about living in a cellar with 20 other people for weeks. They huddled in the dark, listening to the thunder of artillery and the rattle of machine guns just above their heads. Food was the first thing to disappear. They survived on scraps of few potatoes, a handful of grain, sometimes nothing at all. Water was just as scarce. People risked their lives, crawling through sniper-infested ruins to reach the Volga River for a bucket of water, often paying the ultimate price. The city was split in two. The Germans held the western parts, while a narrow strip along the Volga was desperately defended by the Soviets. Civilians were caught in this no-man's land. They learned to read the sounds of war, the whistle of incoming shells, the drone of different aircraft, the crack of a sniper's rifle. They became experts in survival. They learned that the safest place during an artillery barrage was close to a recent crater, because shells rarely strike the same spot twice. They learned to move only at night, like ghosts in their own ruined city. One of the most harrowing aspects was the constant presence of death. It was everywhere. The bodies of soldiers and civilians lay in the streets, unburied for weeks. The psychological toll was immense. Yet, amidst this apocalyptic landscape, there were incredible acts of humanity. Doctors and nurses worked in makeshift hospitals in basements, performing surgery with minimal supplies and by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. One nurse, Maria, described using vodka to sterilize wounds and torn bedsheets for bandages. They saved countless lives, working until they collapsed from exhaustion. Teachers gathered orphan children in cellars, trying to provide a sliver of normalcy, telling them stories to drown out the sounds of war. They were protecting the future in a world that seemed to have none. Then came the winter, the famously brutal Russian winter. For the German soldiers, it was a frozen hell they were unprepared for. For the civilians, it was another layer of suffering. Temperatures plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Starvation and cold became as deadly as any bullet. People burned furniture, books, anything they could find, just to stay warm for a few more hours. Stories of cannibalism began to circulate, a grim testament to the absolute desperation people were driven to. A survivor recounted how the silence of the snow-covered ruins was often more terrifying than the noise of battle, because it meant people were too weak to even cry out. But the winter also brought a change in the tide of the battle. On November 19, 1942, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive called Operation Uranus. They encircled the entire German Sixth Army, cutting them off from their supply lines. The besiegers had become the besieged. For the civilians still trapped in the German-occupied parts of the city, this was a moment of hope, but also of renewed danger. The trapped German army became even more desperate and brutal, but their supplies dwindled and starvation began to set in for them. Finally, on February 2, 1943, the remnants of the German 6th Army surrendered. The battle was over. Stalingrad was free. But what was left of it? The city was a ghost town of rubble and skeletons. Of the nearly 500,000 people who lived in Stalingrad before the battle, it's estimated that fewer than 10,000 civilians were found alive in the ruins. The rest were dead, or had been evacuated or deported. The survivors emerged from their basements and cellars like specters, blinking in the winter sun. They were emaciated, traumatized, but alive. The story of Stalingrad civilians is not just one of suffering, but of incredible resilience. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable horror. They endured hell on earth, and their will to live never completely broke. As soon as the fighting stopped, the work of rebuilding began. People started clearing the rubble with their bare hands, determined to bring their city back to life. The personal stories from Stalingrad are a powerful reminder that war is not just about soldiers and strategies. It's about ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. It's about the loss of homes, the loss of loved ones, and the struggle to hold on to one's humanity when the world descends into chaos. Their sacrifice and their survival are an integral part of the legacy of Stalingrad, a legacy we must never forget. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more untold stories from history. Stay curious.